Do we need to speak up? Good with the mic.
We definitely, well, you know this, Mike. If you have one, you know it. Yeah. Okay. Great.
All right.
Okay. Welcome. We are at NRB, and I'm Ann Beal from the Getting Better Show, and I have my co-host today, Dr. Jim Slaughter.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you.
And I'm very excited today to bring you two wonderful men, Lee Strobel and his book, A Case for Heaven. And we actually were reading the book, and then we watched a little bit of the movie, but we can't say anything. We tried to finish it today. And I have Manny Sandoval. Now, you are the producer.
Yeah, producer-director.
Producer-director. And your website, I'd like to tell them immediately for the movie.
Yeah.
What is it?
thecaseforheavenmovie.com.
.com. How about you, Manny? Because you have a website, too.
Yeah, our company is SandovalAgency.com, and also the studio site that produces the film is SandovalStudios.com.
Yes, okay. I went and looked at that. I was excited about all that. So we are excited about your movie, and I know that you're in the movie, too.
Yeah.
And you produced it, you were in the movie, and you interviewed so many people.
Yes.
So what brought you to actually do that, to write the book and make the movie?
Well, I almost died 10 years ago. My wife found me unconscious and called an ambulance and woke up in the emergency room. The doctor looked down at me and said, "You're one step away from coma, 2 steps away from lethal." And then I went unconscious again. So I had a rare medical condition called hyponatremia, which is a severe drop in blood sodium. And so I hovered between life and death for quite a while until they were able to save me. And it's a very clarifying experience, because you want to know for sure what happens if I and I don't know my is there an afterlife. Of course, as a Christian, I believe the Bible that it teaches, but I've also got a skeptical ear because my background's in journalism and law, so I tend to be skeptical. So I wanted to investigate what is the evidence that supports or contradicts what the Bible tells us about the afterlife, and that's what launched me on my investigation that resulted in the book, The Case for Heaven, and then through my friendship with Manny Sandoval, the new fact.
So lawyers, they don't trust. They don't trust very well, right?
They don't. And, I think it's healthy to have a degree of skepticism.
Me too.
Even the Bible says test everything and hold on to that which is good. And so it would be better if some people would have a bit of skepticism about things. But I think what happens is when you investigate the case for heaven, you find that we have clear and compelling evidence that the Bible's telling us the truth, that there is indeed an afterlife, that there is a heaven, there is a hell. I have 2 chapters on hell in my book.
Oh, you do.
And even a chapter on reincarnation and so forth, looking at other alternatives and putting them to the test. And I think the film does a powerful job of encouraging believers, giving them renewed hope, but also for non-believers, I believe could be a turning point for many people. They may come to faith as a result of seeing this film, don't you, man?
Yeah, I think what we try to do is make the apologetics in the book more accessible in the film, in the sense from a story perspective. So as people, we can relate to a lot of people's stories or struggles because we see ourselves in that struggle. But what we're trying to present here is that why is it that we believe what we believe? And if you don't believe in God, how is it so prevalent in your life that you don't even know it? And then we go into science, history, philosophy, which philosophy was a big one for me. I didn't know that could work. And I learned so much about that. So I think what we try to do is create an experience, because this is a theatrical. So if people are going to spend their hard-earned money, we really don't want to waste their time. It takes a lot of time to get the babysitter. It takes a lot to get to the theater period these days, right? So we want, and our promise to the audience is, we're encouraging them that, this movie moved us, hence why we created it. So we wouldn't put out anything that doesn't move us. So I think something we've been saying a lot is this film is an opportunity for that mother, the father, the husband, that friend that's praying, man, how do I share my faith? And the point is not for this film to just do it all for you. The truth is you can learn how to do it yourself. And I think that's what's powerful about God, is that He gives us that choice, the ability to use our mind, our hearts, and dive into it. It's ours. It's accessible for us. We just got to seek the truth.
In the first few chapters of the book, we talk about how prevalent happens to you personally is this thinking about death.
Yes.
People realize it not.
Yes.
And that virtually everything, well, at least from a humanistic perspective.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
how do I live longer? How can I be
Right.
more healthy? How
That's
can I
right.
do this?
Because if you don't believe in an afterlife, this is all you have. Only way you can live on without God is leave a mark in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to write a great book, or design a cathedral, or paint a masterpiece, or shoot John Lennon.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is what-
crazy.
yeah.
I saw that. I was like, oh, I
Mark
didn't know
David
that.
Chapman said, "I did it to steal his fame."
Yeah.
And the Columbine killers said, "Who's going to direct the movie about us?" They wanted to live on and so forth. So there's a lot of negative things.
Take people's lives so that my life will go on longer.
Yes.
After I die. Or take people's fame. Again, it's
Yeah.
like envy, right?
Yeah, it is.
And take it. I want that. Even that.
Yeah,
You mentioned about putting your name on buildings.
Right.
I have noticed that they change.
yeah.
Oh, that's the name of the building, or that's the really football stadium.
Yes. They like change every week.
Ah, God. And that's very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, because they had the one in Dallas, the
Right.
new Dallas stadium. And now it's called something else. It's AT&T now.
I know.
Yeah.
A couple of stadiums, AT&T Stadium.
So money can outbuy you.
Yeah.
There is
it's
a
just
common
about
one
money.
that the one about naming your children.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the point of legacy. And that was convicting. I mean, how many of us do that?
Yeah.
Or think about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's we live our lives doing all these things, but we don't realize sometimes like what we're doing or why we're doing it. And I think this film really just gives you like a step back and go, oh man, like we got all the big things. Everything we do matters.
Well, and when you said that most people don't know their grandparents,
Yeah.
great-grandparents,
Yeah.
and I do because it's Alfred Kelly Bartlett the third. My brother's the third,
Oh,
and my
you can
grandfather's
trace
the
that.
second. My great-grandfather's the first,
Yeah.
and they had a pocket watch they passed down. Now, I'm not like he's the only junior. He's the third. There
Yeah.
aren't any other of those in the family. But for me, I didn't. People were saying that I should name my daughter Ann, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to put that on them. You know?
Oh.
But you know, lots of families like the oldest,
Yes.
the first name, the son is Robert. You know, so they have all these Robert Beals or
Yeah.
all these, you know, and so part of it, I really related to that, and and it is like if you don't have so many people depressed that they don't have a void
Yeah.
because their name won't live on.
Right. Right.
And you know, and so trying to do that, but this is the perfect time. I know you started filming it before COVID or during.
It was actually when we started development before COVID, and then once COVID started, we were in production.
Is it amazing? Because people are much more afraid of death.
Absolutely.
They think about it a whole lot.
Absolutely. And that's 29% of Americans know someone who's died of COVID. My brother died at the beginning of the pandemic. I just met a guy this morning. He's lost 8 people he knows
my God.
during the pandemic. And it's causing people to ask questions and say, golly, I just lost a family member. What happens next? Are they still around? Are they still living? Will I see them again someday? And these are all legitimate questions that people have. And fortunately, we have good answers for that. And I think, as Mandy just said, which I think is so good, when you can combine apologetics, which is cerebral evidence, with the heart and with stories, it makes an impact on people that is amplified.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I believed in God my whole life, but it was important for myself to surround myself with other people that don't have the same walk of life or experience. You know, like a lot of the people in the film, the guests, they were atheists, agnostics. You know what I mean? One of our writers came to faith during the making of the film. You know what I mean? So what I'm getting at is everyone's journey is different, but the evidence is there. And I think God is so much closer to us than we think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what the film is so beautiful, because I think it makes people realize, oh my gosh, that's me, isn't it? But you can't see yourself until you have that different perspective. It's like a mirror. And we didn't want to shy away from the hard questions. I think we have a gentleman in the film that is asking some really hard questions and wrestling with his faith and all those things. And I think that's very relatable. I think a lot of young people have a lot of questions. But when we're looking for the answers, the question is, where are we looking for the answers?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How are you able to maintain, I don't know, kind of, objectivity about this? Especially when you're hearing people whose ideas about the afterlife.
Yeah, I think it's, God in his sense of humor took a guy who'd been an atheist but trained in journalism and law, brought me to faith, but then redeemed my journalism background and my legal background so that that's what I do, is interview people. And I will travel and I will sit down with people and ask them the tough questions and try to listen respectfully to what people have to say, but then test it against the evidence. Like we did this chapter on reincarnation. We said, there's millions of people believe in reincarnation. Why don't I believe in reincarnation? Because of all the evidence against it and the internal inconsistencies and contradictions in it. And so I don't think we should be afraid to ask questions or to put our faith to the test. Because we, as Christians, have an unfair advantage in the marketplace of ideas. We have truth on our side. And so we ought to be confident as we engage with others.
You actually interviewed people who had investigated all these people who had died and come back.
Near-death experiences.
Near-death experiences.
Yes.
How many?
Oh, how many? Well, golly, these are much more common than people think. What was the number? 1 out of every 25 Americans?
Yeah, it's like 13 million Americans have near-death experience.
Yeah.
What's interesting, too, is that I didn't know what an NDE was. And secondly, I didn't know how you could credibly believe in one. And third, it was like so supernatural. I'm like, how could we know this for sure? What does this mean? What does it tell us? And the first thought that came to my mind is like, man, this is a little new agey, and I bet some people think it's heresy. But the question is, why are these happening, and what is it telling us? And Lee does a great job. How does it tie?
Yeah, we have to look at, are they consistent with Christian theology? John Burke, Christian pastor, studied 1,000 near-death experiences, found the commonalities in them, and says they are consistent with Christian theology. How do we know they're real and somebody's not just making this stuff up? Because we only dealt with cases where there was corroboration. So, for instance, a woman named Maria who died in the hospital, but she said, I was conscious the whole time. And she described how her spirit separated from her body. She saw the resuscitation efforts taking place. Her spirit floated out of the hospital. And then when she was revived, her spirit returned to her body. And she said, oh, by the way, there's a man's tennis shoe on the roof of the hospital. And it's dark blue, it's left-footed, it's a man's tennis shoe. There's a little wear over the little toe, and the shoelaces tucked under the heel. And they go up in the roof, and they found it just like that. That's just one of many examples that we deal with where we have outside independent corroboration, including blind people who've been blind since birth, and yet they're able to see for the first time during their near-death experience. And when they recover, they're blind once more. As one researcher said, that's physically impossible. And yet we have 21 cases that have been documented. So I think we have good evidence that indeed we have a soul, we have a spirit, that it does separate from our body, just like the Bible says. Paul said to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And we have the resurrection of Jesus, which gives us confidence that he is not just an eyewitness to the afterlife, since he died and came back from the dead, but that confirmed his identity as being the Son of God. So he created the afterlife. So we ought to give special consideration to what he says about these things. And he becomes the expert that we should lean upon.
Wow, I just can't believe the timing, because people truly are terrified of dying. They are so terrified. And then we've actually, they're calling it actually COVID PTSD now, because they were so traumatized, being really believed. The kids are not allowed to come home because the mom didn't want to die, right? And they weren't. Truly, they were like, if you come through my house, you'll die. So talk about looking at death so closely.
Right.
I don't think people have really, on a whole, done that. And I'm really perfect argument. Where would people go to find the movie? And what date does it come out?
Yeah, if they go to thecaseforheaven.com, you can put in your zip code or your city's name. Like, for instance, I was going to be in Chattanooga, Tennessee on opening night. And I thought, I hope the movie's opening in Chattanooga. Went in there, typed in Chattanooga, boom, it came up. Here, sure enough, it's in 1,000 theaters coast to coast. So that's what you can also see the trailer and some background information. So that's a great place to go, a great resource to go. A lot of churches are buying out movie theaters and encouraging their congregation to take the tickets and invite a friend. At Colorado Christian University, where I have a center, we've rented out a movie theater to show the students the film. And Manny wouldn't tell you this, but he and his brother have rented out a theater in the inner city of New York, of L.A., and they're giving free tickets away to kids that can't afford it. So I think it's an opportunity for many students.
Are the fourth, fifth, and sixth? Are you
Fourth,
good for
fifth,
all?
and sixth. Yep. Yeah, this is in LA, so we grew up in South Central LA. My parents came from Guatemala, so we're immigrant families from South Central. So it's like the projects, the government housing. So what we're really trying to do, and what we want to challenge anyone who's listening is, truly, you don't have to be a pastor or have a church to invite someone to come see this movie. Our promise is that we wanted to make it accessible and a conversation piece, so that when you can invite someone, that they could really understand what is it that you truly believe, but also as a believer, it can challenge you in your faith. And actually, in my opinion, it just makes me more thrilled because what I believe is so real, tangible, and this evidence is so compelling. And we want to encourage people, take the risk. I wouldn't be here if someone didn't take the risk of sharing the gospel.
Yeah, take the risk.
Yes.
And that person was my mother.
Oh, really? Wow.
She could have gave up.
Film is beautiful.
It was.
We haven't
Beautiful.
gotten all the way through the search, but we will come out. And what we have seen is just remarkable, man. Good job.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah,
It is beautiful.
Can't
film.
wait to see it on the big screen.
Oh, I know.
That's going to be. Some people say, "I'll wait till it streams," or I get the DVD. Man, you got to see it in the movie.
It'll be real different.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it'll be a great experience.
Because the place where you went when Filiberto Cafe, what knows? Is it a drugstore? It's across the street from where I've been there. And
Oh, have you?
And I was like,
Oh.
Filiberto's. Oh my gosh, I know where this is.
Oh, that's
Talking about the cafe,
It
maybe.
was just, yeah. And there were different places. Sometimes I would think, oh, I know where that is.
Yeah,
That was
Cannon
there.
Beach, Oregon, and
Yeah. Well, I-
Sedona, Arizona.
Sedona, Arizona. Yeah, it was
Las
exciting.
Vegas. Las Vegas.
See, you did, and that's the coolest thing. That's checking out all the evidence and
Right.
corroboration. And because we were saying he did remind us of patterns of evidence with Timothy Mahoney. The film, so he's following all the archaeological evidence and matching it with the biblical record.
Yeah.
And so he's got those are so good. But he did that just like he's not an attorney, but that is such an attorney thing to do.
Oh,
And the way you did it, I thought, yeah, that's why it's called The Case.
Yes.
The
Right.
Case.
Well, you have many case books.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Case file.
Kind of a run.
It's brand. It's the brand.
All
I
right.
think we're getting the.
Are you taking him somewhere
sign
else
here.
right
It's
now?
time to
And
go.
then you'll come back here at 3:45 or right? Not even like it's okay. Okay. So what we're gonna do is when you come back, we're gonna finish. She's gonna bring you back here at 3:45.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right,
All
thank
right,
you guys.
thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
We
it.
can take care of it later.
Thank you.
Have you met Marshall?